It's not just about we got the lowest price, we stack them deep and sell them cheap. It's about building that dealership brand. This is the cool kid club. Like, this is where on a Friday night I want to go there. You know what I mean? I want to go hang out there until 7 o'clock when they close, and then I want to do the ride with Danny on Saturday at 4 o'clock. And you got to build that community and be totally involved. And the better you do at that, man, we see it every day. You look, we got all the different regions, and why is he on top? He does events all the time. He's got incredible customer engagement, and they're not perfect, those dealers. There's things that they can improve on, but they're doing those core key basics that, and they do them well, and they refine it, and that just keeps people connected.
Today on the podcast, we interview Rod Lopusnak, who is the president and general manager of Triumph North America. We discuss his career arc, where he starts off sweeping the floors in his grandparents' dealership all the way up through running Triumph North America and really ushering in a lot of the big changes that have happened over the previous few years. Things like the introduction of the Triumph dirt bikes and even the 400cc kind of smaller displacement introductions they've been doing. It's made a huge difference in dealerships, and it's really changed the offerings of the dealerships across the country. So we discuss how that has impacted the business model and really the experience that customers have when they come into the stores. So really great episode. I hope you enjoyed as much as we enjoyed recording it. Please make sure you like and subscribe, share this with anybody you think is going to find it relevant and interesting. And if you would like to sponsor the podcast or maybe be on an episode of the podcast, please reach out to the Dealer Lab at onex.io. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Rod, it is so nice to have you here. I do especially like the conference room you called from. Like we mentioned before, it says dealers first or dealer first. So good job.
Yes.
That's a good start already for the Dealer Lab. But how's it going? Thanks for joining us.
It's going good, man. It's good to see you, Max and Danny. It's awesome. I'm happy to be here. Excited. Anything motorcycle makes me excited.
I was going to say
to
kick it off. I mean, big news out of France, huh? Major.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Like, if you think about, we've been doing this for, 22, 24 months now. It's pretty spectacular. We've had some success here, and those guys are absolutely, Vince over there and the team are killing it. So yeah, absolutely
We're
amazing.
talking about motocross wins, right?
Yeah, 250s.
Yeah. MXGP.
Good job. I mean, it's incredible that you guys launched a product and 24 months later you're on the podium. Actually, the last time that we saw you in person was at Supercross in Anaheim, which was a really fun event. It was so crazy to sit in the crowd and see Triumph everywhere, like Triumph going across the banners, and to think like, this is a totally new sport that we haven't been in before. And you were a huge part of ushering that whole thing in. Am I right?
Yeah, I'm a little piece. It's a puzzle with a lot of pieces. I think the cool thing, like you said, Max, for me is when I spent 20 years at Suzuki and I left there, and I really grew up racing motocross. That was my passion as a kid. And I wanted to be one of those guys. I was just never fast enough. You know what I mean? So then I had to go the business route to stay, connected to motorcycling. But the cool thing is when I left Suzuki, I was like, okay, well, my off-road piece is going to go away. I'll just keep my old Suzukis and then really just go off-road on my own, right? And the road piece will be Triumphs. And then a couple of years in, our chief product officer, Steve Sargent, called and kind of said, hey, we're kind of interested in this. I know your background. Would you mind taking us throughout the U.S. and we do a tour? We really want to understand what off-road is, what motocross, supercross is. So then we got the opportunity. We spent 2 weeks on the road and really dug into it. And then just a few months after that, they came back and committed 100% that we're going to do this, And my view always is if a few years ago you went to a Supercross and you sat in the stands, the only person you'd see with a Triumph shirt on is an old guy like me. You know what I mean? Where today you could literally go see a 5, 6, 10-year-old kid with a Triumph racing shirt on. And that's like, I don't think it's hard to understand that the monumental change for the brand that started. It's massive because of just how big and powerful Supercross is. I mean, they've grown leaps and bounds over, the last 10 years and in the last 2 years globally with their streaming. I mean, it's massive.
They're continuing
above MotoGP.
They're continuing. Yeah, it's nuts. It's continue. I mean, Anaheim was
And look at their
packed. It had to have been sold out.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it was. Yeah. Their programming, I mean, they really have done an amazing job with NBC and Peacock, where now, they've really gotten to the mainstream of sports and motorsports, where you have all the shows now are on prime time at 7 on Saturday, Eastern Standard Time, right? Where before it was always like, okay, California, if you're on the East Coast, it would be at 10 o'clock or 10:30, right? And you would lose a lot of viewership. Well, now it's 100%. All rounds, all 17 rounds of Supercross are on at 7 o'clock, no matter where you are, Eastern Standard Time. So, that's prime time on the West Coast. So that's exploded, viewership. And I think the programming quality, everything that they do now, they have, multiple announcers. It's amazing. One of our employees, Ricky Carmichael's the announcer. So I think they do an amazing job with it, and they continue to invest and really make it better. So no, it's, from an awareness standpoint, as you said, Max, going into stadiums, it's mind-blowing to see the transformation with the awareness, And when we raced the first Supercross back in Detroit last year, our web traffic was higher than it's ever been in the history of the company, just because of people who are like, what the hell's Triumph? You know what I mean? Or, hey, my grandfather had one of them. What are they doing now racing Supercross? So, it's a big move for us as a company and a brand and the dealers. And it takes time. All those other brands have done an amazing job, and they're 50, 60 years ahead of us, but it's fantastic to be in there and compete at the level we are already. And it's great for the sport to see us, Ducati, these other brands get involved. It makes it a much more global, and it gets everybody involved in motorcycling.
Brand awareness is clearly a huge piece of this. It's been really fun to watch the races on TV and see Ricky wearing a Triumph shirt. It's like, man, couldn't possibly get the brand in front of more people than by doing that too. Racing the vehicles and having the logo right in front of everybody. But what was cool, and when we were in Anaheim, I mean, the average age was probably 20 years younger than the average age of what our customers are right now in dealerships around the country. So it's great to see that we really are finding new riders and new enthusiasts to get into that space.
I mean, I'm sure the data's out there. I mean, the percentage of people that are riders now that started off on a 50cc dirt bike, I mean, it's got to be massive, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm a prime example, right?
He's the one
I grew up, all of us, right? Now we have, the challenge of Xbox and PlayStations and all that, right? The kids get involved in it. So, I think it's super cool that it's on TV and we can get kids involved. And I think the other cool piece, like you were saying, at Anaheim, is the families, right? You go there and there's a mom and dad with 3 kids of all different ages. And that's what's super cool about Supercross, because you can go get an amazing seat. You can see 99% of the track from any seat in the house. You want to go get some food, a beer or soda, you can do that easily. Restrooms are easy. You're not getting dirty. It's really an amazing experience, and I think it's just great for motorcycling.
Last weekend I was at Moto America over at Barber and watching the races there, and mentioning, like, at motocross you could see 99% of the race. You're engaged the entire time. Look, I grew up road racing and love road racing. You're right. Being a spectator at a road race when you're not staring at a TV screen is really hard. You can only see there they went. I'll see what happens in another 3.5 minutes when they come back around again. So it is a very different viewing experience, and it's been really fun to keep up with what you guys are doing in that. So,
yeah, how many times, Max, have you been at a road race where it could be, MotoGP back in the day at Laguna Seca or something, and you end up sitting in the paddock and somebody's truck watching it on TV just so you can see the entire race.
It's the only way
right?
to actually experience the race, is to watch it on TV, whereas motocross is just such a different game.
Yeah.
So very cool stuff. Now,
yeah, they've done an amazing job.
Growing up being a dirt bike head, you grew up though in an actual dealership. Was it your grandparents' dealership in New Jersey? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So my grandfather he started as a BSA dealer, back in the 50s, and then honestly Yamaha begged him to take the Yamaha line in the 60s, and he was the first Yamaha motorcycle dealer in New Jersey. So fortunately for me, I grew up that way. I loved, getting out of school and being able to go to the dealership or going there and sweeping the floors on a Saturday, and that was, and I grew up just riding bikes all the time. We had a dump that we went riding on, but to me, it was the greatest thing in the world. We would take old plastic milk jugs and fill them with gas, and we'd have places that me and my friends would hide them all over. So, if we ran out of gas, because you needed premix back in the day, right? You would go and literally, we'll go by the bush over there, or, wherever. We had literally plastic gas jugs, when gas was 70 cents a gallon, and we'd leave them everywhere so that we could just ride all day instead of pushing the thing out, and to go get gas. So yeah, that's how I grew up. And I just, I loved it. I got super connected to motocross, and I love the business part of it too. My grandfather was super influential with that. So it was a cool part. It was awesome to grow up. And then unfortunately he passed away when I was 17, and then my grandmother kept the dealership for a few years. And then, basically she just wanted to retire. Somebody came in and offered him a lot of money for the building at the time. And, she sold it off. And then I went to work for a few of what I would say are competitors in the market that were, business friends with my grandfather. But you know how it is, Max. It's hard to get dealers to play in the same sandbox, in a super positive manner. So then I ran a few stores in New York for, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 years. Did really well at that. And then my goal was to get on the OEM side. And then I became a district manager at Suzuki for a long time. And I was in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area for a few years. And then I got promoted a bunch of different jobs at Suzuki. And then I was basically in charge of the ATV division for a number of years, and was part of the process building a manufacturing plant actually here in Georgia. All Suzuki's ATVs are built here in Rome. So that's how I actually ended up here in Atlanta. And then I was promoted to run the company, which I was still able to do here from Atlanta. And then about every 4 years at Suzuki, you would get a new president. It's kind of like our political system. Sometimes it was a really good choice, and sometimes it wasn't. You never knew it. Yeah, you would sit. It would always happen, like in the middle of the year, and you'd be like, "Okay, who's coming? Do you know him? What country is he coming from?" And you'd be trying to email everybody, trying to figure out, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? So. And then the president changed, and some of the presidents I absolutely loved. I loved my time at Suzuki. And when the president changed, he wanted me back in California full time. And I'm just not a California guy. When I did move out there for a while, for about 8 years with Suzuki, and I didn't love it. It's a great place to live. I mean, a great place to visit. Terrible place to live, in my opinion. I'm just an East Coaster. So, and then Triumph came calling. So that kind of worked out in a really good way for me.
Did you have a stint at Tucker as well? Did you do?
Yeah. I actually left Suzuki twice.
Hard to get.
And fortunately, the presidents that were there, they liked me, so they took me back. I think I hold the record at Suzuki. I was employed 3 times there, but hopefully that means I did a good job. I actually had a year stint at Tucker. Steve Johnson, the old president, who was a great guy, he got heavily involved in sponsoring our pro ATV motocross team, back in the early 2000s. And he really wanted me to come, run the business and potentially, replace him someday. And so I went there for a year, but it was just, it was messy, a lot of just management challenges. So fortunately I never moved to Dallas, Fort Worth. I was going back and forth. We almost did. And then, like I said, we had a president change, interesting enough, at Suzuki. And one of the old presidents came back, and he begged me to come back. So I did go back to Suzuki. And then I actually went to AMA Pro Racing when AMA, rights, it was one piece, and then Pro Racing was a separate business back when they did control Supercross and road race and everything. So I was really the vice president of sales. I sold all the sponsorship. For Supercross, for road racing, flat track,
what year
all
was that around?
So I did that for a year, and then, oh Jesus,
Shouldn't ask.
I'm old, I forget.
I'm just curious, thinking about the riders that I might have known back then.
Yeah. It was back like towards the end of Duhamel days, on the road race side, and so it was a really cool experience. I got to know a lot of people. So for me, as a kid that grew up riding dirt bikes, my career has taken me places I never thought. I was the kid who had every magazine page of every rider, whether it be Wayne Rainey, Kevin Schwantz, DeCoster, all those guys on my wall, and then to come, to get to be DeCoster's boss, was insane to me. I still don't
hang out with those guys.
And the cool relationships that I've built now with like Ricky and Jeff Stan, all the great riders, James Stewart, all the people, Kevin Schwantz, people that are just truly, friends of mine now. It's just, that's hard for me to
they're
believe.
legends.
So,
They really are.
yeah, super cool. Just to call
So
them
you've
friends.
seen every angle of this industry as well. I mean, that must bring a very unique perspective into the role you're in now as general manager of North America. Is that right? Did I get it right? Of all of North America? Nice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
how does that impact the way that you interact with dealers or the way that you guys come up with programs? I mean, you've seen so many angles of this. You know more details about what it's like to be a dealer and how dealers interact with each other, like you mentioned before. Like, that from a different perspective. How does that help you kind of run Triumph as you do now?
I mean, it does, and that's how I came up with the slogan "Dealer First." I mean, I try to always have that mentality, but it's always difficult because you have, of course, the OEM has goals and targets, right? And then you have the reality piece of the dealer. So how do my job is to kind of blend that the best I possibly can, like I always tell dealers, I don't have a magic wand, I'm not the CEO. It doesn't say Rod on the building. It says Triumph. You know what I mean? So it's really finding that, that balance and having the ability to communicate, I would say, the North American dealer needs and the market needs to the UK, and kind of find that. It was no different at Suzuki, and that's the piece. It's all about communication. My view is there's no OEM out there that's perfect. They all do a lot of things really, really good, and there's things that they don't do good, and we're the same, and we focus on trying to improve those. And I think that the great thing about Triumph is we're pretty flat organization. One of the things I changed first is we publish every staff member's cell phone, our dealer guide, so everybody has it, including mine. I'll take people's phone calls at 7 days a week.
Let's go ahead and flash that number on the screen.
678. No,
to guess the rest. It's going to be a tough one.
So and I think the thing is as long as we could sit down, OEM to dealer and have an amicable conversation and come up with a solution. It's never perfect because the U.S. and North America, it's a big target. Some of these other countries, like you go in Europe, they're as big as Georgia, the state. You know what I mean? So it's we're managing 6 time zones, 50 states, all the Canadian provinces. So there's a lot there, and things are different in California as they are in New Orleans or Indiana or wherever. So it's always trying to balance all that. We have 50 state laws we have to abide by. It's not. In Europe, in one of the countries there, it's one law, where every state here's got their own law. Whether it's a helmet law, it's a franchise law. There's just so many pieces of the puzzle. So it's trying to balance all that. But I mean, I'm a dealer at heart. I grew up that way. It was, still to today, I think it was the funnest part of my professional education. And I still feel strongly that, I still feel strongly that, everybody who works in this industry should spend a little time in a dealership, because it's just different. Those guys, as Max, have their lives invested in that, and that just makes a difference. I always tell my staff, we get our checks every 2 weeks, no matter what, right? Where the dealer, it doesn't work like that, and it really, boils down to that. And it's just sometimes you just got to keep it basic. I always like to tell people, everybody wants to be Apple and Google. That's so unrealistic, especially in our industry. Just focus on the basics. If we could all just do the basics good, we're 90% there, because everybody makes amazing product, right? We just need more people in motorcycling. We don't have to be so adversarial. If you beat me on a Saturday or Sunday, okay, great. But the great thing is we're still all in the race, right? And we should be building this together.
I love that.
I
you
think
guys
that's
have definitely been, I mean, obviously we work with a lot of brands and have worked very closely with you guys. It's obvious I say that because our entire office is a bunch of Triumph memorabilia. We look more like a Triumph corporate office than you do at this point.
Well, I was going to ask you, did you guys set this up for me?
For you, yeah, we changed these for every brand. Yeah, no,
Danny, I see that hammer next to your chair.
Exactly. Just put these up. So yeah, I mean, we feel that very strongly about Triumph as a partner, and it's been, when we did the turnaround, so much of being able to actually keep this store alive was by being able to have honest conversations about here's the struggle of being a dealer. And there are other OEMs that we talked to that didn't sit quite as well. It didn't go as easily to say, hey, look, here's the reality of the situation. And you guys were like, all right, cool. We're gonna make sure that this works out. So it's cool how dealer first you guys are. It's not just a sign behind your head. It's like, it really is how we've felt that as well, which is great. It's very cool to see. With that being said, too, you guys have launched some really cool stuff. We've got demo days again. We've got what was it, the Unleash tour, that came around. I mean, I think those were really well attended. They worked really well. It seems like some of the strategy right now is making sure that dealers are the like stage that customers interact with, and you guys seem to really recognize that the show doesn't just happen by the branding that you guys as Triumph North America do, or as Triumph Global does. It's really the dealers, that first point of contact. So what are some of the things that you're really focusing on? What's your ethos inside the company to make sure that the dealership experience aligns with the brand vision?
Yeah, I think that the cool thing is when we sat down as a group, because every year we kind of try to go into it. We understand our new models, right? And I think Triumph's always done an amazing job with their events, the parties that they throw, right? Because they want to be premium, but the real piece of it is we're a lifestyle brand, especially on the street side, right? And I think at the end of the day, whether you're a Japanese brand, the motorcycle dealership's a cool place. It's one of the coolest places in town, right? And we just had a discussion about that, as a group. And I think that's the one key piece that, you can get caught up in. You got all these big roll-ups, these mega stores and everything, and you kind of lose the coolness of the motorcycle dealership. It becomes a Home Depot. Yeah, it's great to run there and get everything, right? But you lose that cool place. Max, how many people came, and sat in your chairs that you built, right, in the dealership, and just wanted to hang out there all day because it's a cool place, right? And maybe sit there for an hour, read a magazine, and not do anything. But it's just it's a cool place. So, part of the vision, from our marketing director was like, we just got to get back in there. We got to drive people into the cool place. Like, because we've done parties at bars and cool museums and all that. And they were good. Don't get me wrong. There's a place for those. But the key was the state of the industry, tariffs, just the economy, the negativity around everything. We're like, let's get them into the dealership, because that's where, so much happens. I mean, it's the focal point of our entire industry. It still is. So really that's where it came from. And we live by those 4 pillars of really trying to be distinctive, cool, authentic, and premium, and everything we do, whether we're making a t-shirt or a motorcycle, the company really lives on that, try to keep the uniqueness, down to the pinstripes, right? We still hand pinstripe all the tanks on the Bonnevilles, and that's cool. They don't want to lose that signature piece, because so much of it today is copycat, and everybody's pushing, and manufacturing's become so much easier, and you have all the Asian countries do a great job now manufacturing. But how do we keep that legacy, the true DNA of the brand? And that goes down to pushing people back. Our dealerships are cool. I always tell people, whether you're in Atlanta or Tokyo, no matter what, it's the same furniture. We have our own paint codes at Home Depot. We make our own tile, our own lighting. You know what I mean? Because you want to live in that lifestyle of Triumph. Yeah. So I think that was the key focus, to get people back into the stores. And I think it did work well. We got really good feedback.
And actually, speaking of feedback too, you guys have gotten really good reviews on service interaction, or specifically like the Pied Piper. You guys got number 1 in 2024. I think you're still in like the top 3.
Yeah.
You're still way up there. How does that happen? I mean, you've worked in a dealership before. You know how hard, I have no doubt that anyone listening to this realizes that the service advisor is the hardest role in the entire store. I mean, beyond even general management. It is a grind. And you are the face of not just service, but you're the face of the ownership experience of the vehicle. And so to have such a high rating for service, how do you support the dealer in that? How do you make sure that's happening? What are you guys doing to make Triumph number 1?
I mean, the team here does a really good job. We have a core group that have been here a long time. They understand, but I'm going to say is the basics. I go back to the Apple Google thing. Everybody wants to be Apple and Google, but in reality, in our industry, so many dealers just miss the basics, right? And if we could focus on just and I don't know, we all would have a different list, but there's those top 10. There'll be 3 service, 3 in sales, 3 in F&I, whatever it is. But if we really just focus on those 10, and dealer follow-up and communication is one of them, right? And it's just that simple. Whether it's in sales or service, you don't have to have a crazy system. What you got to have is a commitment and a process to start, right? And then as you get better, you can improve it. And I think that's we just try to preach that. Just we have dealers come in all the time, whether it's old dealers or new. Well, what's the secret sauce? there's really not a secret sauce. It's really sticking to the fundamentals and getting to do those well. And then when you get well at that, highly encouraged, go to a 20 group, learn from the best people, change all the time. Don't be afraid to learn. Don't be afraid to change. But the focus really, for me, is really focus on the basics. Everybody wants to jump to step 10, and they forget, step 1 and 2. And it's really the basics and just in process, right? Create a quality process, and everybody's is a little bit different. I think, that was one of my big learnings coming from a Japanese OEM to Triumph, because I came here and I was like, what the hell are they doing? This ain't gonna work. And then all of a sudden you start living in it, and it's a different brand. It's a different lifestyle. It's much more about the brand, not just the product, And then you understand it, and you visit dealers, and you're like, God damn, he's doing an amazing job. Look at this. I never thought that would work, right? Because I was in my lane, And that's, I think, the good thing about a new dealer is they don't have a lane yet. The bad thing about an old dealer is they have a lane. And it's very difficult to get them out of that lane, And it's like, and a lot of them do great jobs, don't get me wrong, but you still got to be open to that. And sometimes just look back and like, hey, we need to get back to basics, And I think that, and having a process, and don't be afraid to change the process. And that's generally what we preach. And fortunately for us, we built a new head office here, and we have a full training facility, a training room. So we do service training here 5 months out of the year. Is it
technical service training, or do you do like service operations?
Yeah, technical. But we add a little bit of operations in there. Whatever we see coming back through our customer service, whether it be customer issues, dealer issues, we try to address it, right? We try to, whether it's a CSI problem we're seeing and there's a common trend, anything like that, we try to address it, or just bring attention to it, right? So the dealers are aware of it, because with technology now, all that stuff changes so fast. You got texting, you got email,
quickly.
Nobody calls anybody on the phone.
So we got to be able to communicate very effectively through text message with that. Now, it's interesting. We do a lot of surveys here at Moto Julia, at the dealer lab, as we call it now on this, mainly because
I love the name, by the way. That's super cool.
Because we try different stuff all the time, and we try those things and test them out because of the feedback that we're getting. And so we've always seen, just like you said, number one is always communication. Like, why is a customer upset with the service department? Well, we didn't communicate effectively. And so making sure, I completely agree that the process of touch base with your customers at least twice a week while it's in, at very least. You can never over communicate with somebody's vehicle is actually here. Like, those are all great processes and principles to stand by. But one of the other big ones that we kept seeing was like not really having the information, not knowing, if I've got, this store sells 5 different brands of vehicles. Each one of those brands has 10 different models within that, so the amount of information grows very quickly. And so to have a service advisor who can not only proactively call and let you know what's going on, but has a real understanding of what job is being done, how much that job's going to cost, what other parts are necessary, and that becomes really complicated. And
because it's a huge part of communication, like, yes, the amount of times that you communicate, but setting the realistic expectations for customers.
What's it really going to cost?
Yes.
What's it really going to take? How long is it going to be? So
how to communicate.
That stuff, I mean, the act of calling or texting and saying we haven't forgotten about you is already dramatically increases the satisfaction of customers. And we've seen that in the lab. We've proven in the lab. Yeah,
it's amazing.
And so the next hurdle, I think, which is a really big one that everybody's trying to figure out and solve, I feel like, is service advisors are usually now at least are a high turnover position. When he and I were actually working at Moto Julia before, when it was TTR&O, over a decade ago now, the service advisors we had been there for a really long time, and so the knowledge of what does a service cost? How long is this going to be? I want to throw this additional job on. What's it going to take? Like, that information is just kind of baked in because they've been there so long. We had really tenured staff.
Yeah.
But it's a different environment now. The turnover, not just at this store, but the turnover in dealerships all around the country is much, much higher than we've seen before. So that historical knowledge, that's just like off the dome understanding of what you're talking about and what's relevant, isn't as... It's not as widespread like it used to be. There aren't as many really well-tenured service advisors. Now, there are still some.
Yeah.
But right now, we have a brand new service advisor that started downstairs in the lab on Tuesday. First time in that role was she's incredibly personable. She rides. She's a great candidate. She's the perfect person to talk to customers about it. She's not going to know what the labor time for replacing a clutch on a Rocket 3 is. Like that's just not going to be something.
They're knowing the right questions whenever a customer's saying that they're having an issue, knowing the right questions to ask to get good diagnosis notes for the technician.
Some of that can be solved in process, but not all of it. And even if that process is great, if you want to tell them that, maybe get a diagnostic beforehand, or if you are going to tell them a price, because they're just calling for a price, to figure that out, for me to be able to tell somebody, here's the labor time for one particular component. If it's not a standard job template, it's going to take looking up the parts, looking up flat rate labor times, which are not just for you guys, for every brand, is really complicated and difficult to do.
Yeah.
So I'm only bringing this up because it's something we're working on right now. We've built for this store, we built this prototype tool. Actually, why I was asking you the other day about, hey, how can we get some more flat rate information? We built this prototype tool that is basically a finely tuned AI agent that our service advisors can talk to and ask questions. And it not only is able to give us, here's the labor time, but we're not pulling that from flat rate manuals. We're actually pulling it from historical repair orders. So it'll pull the 30 different times we replaced a clutch on a Rocket 3 and show me the median time and the parts that existed on all those jobs, which is that knowledge base that our tenured service advisors already have. And I feel like that's, for us at least in the lab, we're constantly trying to say like, okay, there's new technology that allows us to do things we couldn't do before. How do we test that stuff out? So I bring all that up to say, like, are there any things you're seeing for dealers? Or
I would say honestly, what it boils down to, what we're trying to do is just make the job easier for these guys downstairs, because I think that's a huge part of the turnover. I mean, a service advisor that's excited to work with motorcycles, excited to be in a dealership, that excitement drains pretty quickly whenever they're getting yelled at every day because a customer's motorcycles aren't ready, or it costs more than what they initially quoted them and the communication wasn't there. So they quit and they can go make as much or more money at Starbucks or Home Depot or something. And they can enjoy motorcycles on the side.
So what are the things, I mean, are there anything that you guys are really focusing on to improve, I wouldn't just say not just customer experience, but like making it easier for the employees to do the job effectively, so that I can spend less time staring at a screen or trying to figure out how to find information, and more time being able to connect face to face with that customer and quickly getting information? What are you guys, is there anything you're working on right now that kind of speeds that process up?
Yeah, there's definitely, I would say there's a lot of pros and cons to AI, depending on who you talk to, right? So there's definitely opportunity there with, I would say we're working now to move a lot of our training, sales training, everything to be much more AI, to where we can score them, we can help them, they can do it on their own when their time is available for them.
They can ask questions to the data, not just have to ingest it in that particular way.
Yeah, it's crazy how they can rank everything, your facial expression, you know what I mean? You're just whatever it is. So, I would say that. Another, area is for us, one of the challenges I think all OEMs face is there's so many languages spoken in our country, right? So it's really hard to connect with someone. So I think AI's, definitely a big opportunity for us, as you go like to the French part of Canada, it's a little bit different than just general French. So that, helps there. So how can we, in a much better rate of communication, much quicker, because before we'd have to finalize the English file, then we'd have to give it off to someone specializing, whether it be in Spanish, French, Canadian, right? And that may take a week or 2 weeks, and then got to clean it and get it back out. Where now, through that, we can really improve that, the speed of it.
I never even thought of that particular problem. That is such a unique little issue to have to solve with that.
Yeah, I mean, they're so, even just in general communication, anytime there's so many languages spoken here. And that doesn't, Portuguese, right?
I wonder how it does on Podium French.
I
don't think anybody, I don't even think they can understand.
But I think it's endless. I think, there's a lot to it. I would say the thing that scares me is with AI, it's like, it makes things vanilla, right? You kind of lose that personality of amazing dealerships or staff or events, because now everybody just wants to dump everything in AI, and it definitely puts something super professional together and nicer, gets you 80-90% there, but everybody does that. It all comes out very similar, right? You don't have that uniqueness.
That's totally
in it.
our ethos. A lot of, we're working a lot with AI, particularly agentic, and we see a lot of other companies in the industry that are going a different path of going AI as customer facing.
Yeah.
And that might be fine,
Yeah.
but our ethos is we're using AI to help the frontline staff so that AI is never talking to the customer.
You retain the flavor.
Yeah.
You retain like the personality and cool.
Yeah,
Personal
you get to
part,
keep,
right?
You
Yeah,
get to
yeah.
keep that excitement that the employee had when they first started.
Yeah.
So they're not looking at their screen and frustrated with the programs that they have to use. And
The antiquated
Yeah.
software.
And especially in our industry, right? Because the general motorcycle customer, it's not for transportation. It's just not an oil change or a new tire so I can get to work.
It's a lifestyle.
Their passion, right? How sticky is this tire, right? Or how's it sound? How does it look, right? I always say the biggest thing people want to do is go to Dairy Queen and stare at the bike that they just spent 4 hours
That's right.
polishing it, right? Because that's half the
Exactly.
enjoyment of a lot of people because
Talking
it's
to
their
somebody
baby,
about their
right?
Triumph, how their dad had a Triumph, or like,
Yeah.
but if my employees are overwhelmed with managing antiquated software, then they don't have
Yeah.
the time to create that like personal connection with the customer. So how do you remove the button clicks are easy for AI to do. The standard, how many times we've seen this type of job, here's the labor time. That's easy for it. So let's have AI do the easily automatable stuff so that the existing staff can make the cool, like,
Yeah, take some of the manual out of it,
so
right?
it can remain fun and
Yeah,
person
yeah.
to person, and so yeah, that's really what we're working on here, and it is. I think it aligns really well with some of the cool things that you guys are working toward and the experiences you're creating inside of stores. I did read too that you guys, or I guess you announced it as well. You guys have done a new partnership. I think it's with Sheffield about being able to allow even customers to start their buying and application process wherever they are at home and then close it in the dealership. How does that work?
Yeah, it's just another avenue, right? Trying to speak to that younger buyer, just that different because we have two great finance partners with Freedom Road and then now with Sheffield, and it's just trying to look in every one of those boxes, right? How do we connect with more people easier? So much today is done on the phone or at the worst, it's crazy to say, but on the computer, right? Because so much is done on your phone. So really just trying to expand the ease for the
Make
customer.
it easy for them to be able to buy wherever they are at that moment. We were at AIM Expo. You may have heard this speech as well, but there was a woman there who was talking about buying her first motorcycle, and the whole story was basically that like she didn't feel comfortable going into a dealership. She wasn't disproven or anything. She just like doesn't like dealerships, right? And that, I think a lot of people can probably say that.
Yeah.
If you haven't been into a cool dealership, or especially a motorcycle dealership that's like inviting, it can be very intimidating as a new rider.
Yeah, what do I say?
Exactly.
How do I act, right?
Not only
Yeah,
a new rider, but maybe a female rider, like very intimidated by walking into this
Yeah, even worse.
place full of old crusty, not old crusty as an insult, but we've been doing this a long time, right? So like we already speak the language. It might be intimidating coming. So she bought her very first motorcycle off Facebook Marketplace by meeting a stranger in a random parking lot and handing him a bunch of cash. Like that's probably terrifying. But it's funny. She would rather risk her life than go into a dealership to buy for the first time.
Yeah.
So how do we lower?
But that just shows you how bad she wanted to ride a motorcycle, which is super cool,
How
right?
terrified she was of how our business actually operates right now. So I think the idea that you're saying, like, making the stores the stage, making them more inviting, more exciting, more person-to-person connection.
meeting the customers where they want to be met.
And meeting the customers where they want to be met. If we can start the process and get it going and show a lot of trust in a digital environment first and then make it easy for them to step through the doors, I think that's how we start getting newer riders in. Which does actually bring me to new riders. You guys have shifted gears tremendously. And I will say, back when I was still owning this store, every dealer meeting I went to, I always complained that we need smaller displacement bikes. I would love small displacement bikes. And it was always like, never going to happen.
See, we weren't listening to you, Max. We were just, we didn't respond as quick as you wanted us to, but we were listening.
Man, I mean, it used to be, the smallest thing we had was a 900cc. It was a $10,000 motorcycle. Now we're touching near $5,000 for 400 cc's. That has created such a new audience for us. Talk to me a little bit about the creation of that. How has that changed the brand and kind of how you guys have grown?
Yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, it's kind of like off-road, you know, it's a whole nother segment of the industry that, you know, is critical for our future. It's like almost like Little League, right? For the street bike guy, you got to get guy and girl on there, you know. Average age of a Triumph rider 2 years ago was 47 years old. So kind of edging, you know, towards the older side, you know. So we got to do something to improve that and get that age down. You know, our target is to try to reduce that age by, you know, 8 to 10 years over the next 5 years. You know, off-road will help, but the 400 cc's is a big piece. And what's crazy to think about it is if you go back just 2 years ago, we didn't have one, and now we have a model lineup of 6, right? So we're literally, and one of the things that we learned in our surveys when we were going through to start developing and building it was one of the comments that came back was that entry-level riders get frustrated because most brands just pick one segment model, whether it be a cruiser or a sport bike, and that's the only one. There's no real choice, right? So that's something that I think Triumph's done a really good job with is like, hey, give people styling choices. They want to choose what they like to ride. And if I start on a Speed 400 and I find out that I want to be an adventure rider 2 years from now, that's fine. But let me have some choices in that segment. So yeah, the focus is to bring more riders in. Average Triumph owner in his life now owns buys 4 new Triumphs. Our goal is to get that to 8. So, you know, more business for the dealer. And you know, my view is at 47, when we did this study and we saw 47, I was like, wow, in most states, you know, it's 16 or 17 years old when you can get your license. We've missed the first 30 years of our average customer, right? So how can we change that? And the 400's a big piece of that. And the other really interesting piece that I look at every month is we look at the top selling models, right? Across the board, every brand. And we exclude Harley, you know, and to be fair to Harley, they'd be 1 through 20, and the top selling. But we don't really compete head to head. And we remove the 3-wheel version, you know, slingshots and things like that. And in the top 40, religiously, every single month, 20% of that is a 500 cc or less street bike, something that is licensable. Some are dual sport, but the high majority is what I would consider like an entry level street bike. Or what we see a lot of, what's really interesting, which I would say we thought some would happen, but it's older people, riders, coming back, and because product has gotten so good and the quality is so well, you know, braking, it's just everything. They want something light and easy that they can get around on. You know, they probably still have their big bike to go either adventure riding or touring if they're going to go a long distance, but they just want something that they're going to go out and do 30, 40, 50 miles on. And we see a lot of people coming back buying a Speed or Scrambler 400. So, you know, super interesting. But again, it's that movement to go, what I say, from a niche brand, which Triumph was for a long time, right, with Bonneville. And then we grew into the roadsters, you know, the street and speed triples, and then adventure bikes, but now really expanded to key pieces. And when you look over the last 5 years, that entry-level segment has exploded, where in the top 40, it used to be bikes above 750 cc's and up. Now it continues to grow because everybody makes great product, right? All products are really, really good. There's a lot more offerings. Performance is good, value is good, the technical capabilities of these new small bikes. It's not just some inexpensive bike to get you out on the road. These bikes perform really well. They have ABS, you know what I mean? Our bikes have 2 years warranty, so it's a true motorcycle. And I think Triumph's done a really good job with the quality.
Well, I agree.
They've done a really nice
Max
job.
made a request years ago, and you kindly granted him that request.
Yeah.
I have a request.
What's that?
Max and I, as he said, we were at Barber.
Can I grant it in 5 years?
Yes, you can. Max and I were at Barber, what is it, last weekend?
Yeah.
Whenever the Moto America races were. And what's one of the first things that we thought of when we got down there in the pits?
Was that I wanted to do it again?
The Thruxton 400. Bring back the Thruxton Cup.
Yeah.
Whenever I was working downstairs,
Cup?
Thruxton Cup was huge down there, and it was so exciting and so fun.
Yeah.
Those Thruxton 400s as a series would be so much fun.
Yeah, so what do you think if we start a Thruxton 400 series? It's going to really drive up those 400 sales. Totally deck them out.
Love
Let's
it.
run them in a bunch of different. It's a spec class of 400s. Cheaper on tires, cheaper on build out. All right.
Yeah. We can go for $6,000 and all go out. And well, what's cool about the 400s, what I love about them is, you know, fortunately, we get to ride the bikes about a year early at our Millbrook Proving Ground out in the UK, which is amazing. And it's like you get these old GMs out there, and we all think, we're Freddie Spencer and, Eddie Lawson, banging bars because we can ride the bike almost to its ability. That's what's cool about the 400.
The part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Chester River Consulting. Now, Chester River is the direct marketing company that we used in the turnaround project and still at the dealer lab. And it is the company that goes through our DMS. It pulls all of our customer data and it communicates them with them in life cycles. So that life cycle management component where we're talking to customers in meaningful ways just at the right time that's relevant to them, that takes a lot of work if you're expecting your team to be able to do it. When Chester River contacts our customers on our behalf through messaging that we have designed along with them, they actually contact a third of my customer base every single month. I mentioned that in the podcast and kind of talk about that in more detail as we go through this. But these are the guys who actually do it. If you're interested in talking to them about how they can do it in your store, contact them at sales@fueledbycrc.com. Again, that's sales@fueledbycrc.com. And enjoy the rest of the show. Thruxton Cup version, that would be awesome. I have a 400 version. So when you mentioned like it's actually older guys getting back into it, I too bought a 400. It's a fun. The build quality, like you said, is actually incredible. I've played with a lot of other small displacement entry level bikes in different brands, and we all know like it's not factory built. These are other companies usually producing these. The quality of what you guys are putting out, which is Bajaj, I believe, right? Like that quality is phenomenal. I mean, that is a really great, and the price point is so incredible. So I've been really blown away by that vehicle. And so after having one for a while and then seeing the Thruxton in the new tour, I was like, oh, we have to do this. This would be so much fun. So
yeah, it's definitely a cool thing that we're looking into that. So we're just, they're just hitting the showroom, so we'll see. But I'm with you 100%.
I'm happy to buy one and start racing it with you.
Brush off the leathers.
I'll get back into it for sure. So with that being said, so you had this, you have a lot of opportunities to bring in new clients, and it's working off-road. The 400s is bringing in newer and older customers as well, myself included. But even the what is it? The TXP, is that right? TXP. The
Ossets.
The kind of rebrand of all the Osset stuff. How's that going? I mean, that's if you're really trying to get them young.
It's good. It's actually so we've kind of transitioned Ossets to Triumphs now, and currently we offer a TXP 12 and 16. And basically, like for us in the old days when it was CCs, the 12 is a 12-inch wheel and it's a 16-inch wheel, right? It's actually outpacing, what we actually thought. So the biggest piece is letting people know we have them. We do a display at every Supercross and every outdoor national. So that's been really amazing where people walked up, I can't believe you have a Triumph for my grandson, my granddaughter, right? And it's just a cool piece. And they're awesome. I mean, there's no premix like when we were kids. There's no loud noise. And really people can ride them anywhere. And it's, again, I always say it's going back to that Little League. We got to get more people on motorcycles and less Xbox. You know what I'm saying?
They can be ridden anywhere. I can say that confidently, knowing that we've raced them around the showroom many times. So it is a lot of fun to do. Yeah. So no, that's going good. And again, never in my time when I came to Triumph would I have thought Triumph would have offered something for a 5-year-old kid. So that's just when you look at the evolution of the brand in the last 4 or 5 years, we call it all in. Triumph is all in here, and the Bloor family. Amazing thing about Triumph, it's privately held, so they're 100% committed to this. And we've built everything that they've built and supported us over the last 5 years. It's just been amazing, and it's going to continue to transcend the brand, as we go forward. Now, TXPs are a different one because they're not titling those vehicles, but with the introduction of the smaller displacement bikes, it does seem like we're selling a lot of them. At least here, we're selling a lot of them. I'm sure you're probably recognizing that we're moving a lot.
They're doing well.
Yeah, and so that is, I feel like, at least personally, I've seen that, yes, we are selling overall a lot of those vehicles, but like across our entire segment, our total unit count hasn't gone up as dramatically. So I do feel like some of the 400s are taking up some of the space of people not buying as many of the large displacement, which is, it's great because we're backfilling, right? We're filling the top of the funnel for the customer that's going to buy the next and the bigger and bigger. But it does mean smaller margins than we had dealt with before. You know, same percentages, but the dollar amount gets eaten up just by freight costs or tariff or whatever, like any of those things. So selling these 400s isn't a hugely profitable opportunity for dealerships. So how do you guys advise dealers on this? This is a shift in how dealerships have operated over the last couple of years, especially your dealer network, with always having 1,000 cc's and above, or $10,000 vehicles and up. So how does it change the landscape for dealers?
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Because if you're not in there, as I was talking about with the top 40, then you're not in the game at all, right? And if they start on a different brand, you have the tendency, if a dealer and the brand does a good job, they're going to stay with a Honda, whatever brand, right? Whatever brand that they go with. So, I mean, the key is we want to try to service all the customers that we can, bring as many people to the brand, do a good job. And I would say the dealers that we're starting to see the success where you're seeing the trade-ins come, right? Where they're coming, they buy a Speed 400 and use it for a year and come back. Hey, now, I want to buy a bobber. That's where my riding styles went, right? I want to buy a Tiger Sports, 660, a Trident, whatever. And they start to ladder up, right? So it's kind of like it's a joint investment because they're not profitable for us either, right?
Of course.
It's a joint investment in the future of motorcycling and trying to keep people with the brand. And it's a simple thing I always talk about is you get dealers, and I don't care what brand it is, because, coming from the dealer world and growing up like I did and having the different positions, I have a good understanding and appreciation for the way a dealer thinks, but there's some things like why a dealer would sell any oil other than an OEM oil. I'm completely confused by that because it's the only place you can buy that oil, right? But if you go and pick Bel-Ray, there's 5,000 additional locations in the United States you can buy that oil. So do as much as you can to drive people back to the brand that you invested in, right?
Yeah.
And strengthen that relationship, keep them loyal to the brand because it's good for your brand, right? It creates a much more loyal customer base, and I think it's the same thing with the 400s. That's why we have those special programs for Motorcycle Safety Foundation. 300,000 people get trained on motorcycles a year, which is a spectacular number when you think about it, right? Yeah. So over the last 50 years, I think the MSF is 51 years old. They've done millions of people, but we all need to be on that track, getting them through because honestly, if you get someone, and I don't care what brand it is, but I'm just going to use one of ours, the Speed 400, they're probably going to have an amazing time, right? Especially with the quality of all the products today. And if that happens and we do our part and build good quality product and have good programs and the dealer does the basics, right? The guy or girl's going to have probably a pretty good experience and want to keep a motorcycle in the garage,
Well, see, I think that's where I don't know if it's liability or what you would call it, but you were saying that the dealer it's not as profitable. They don't make as much money or they make little money selling these 400s. That's why it's so crucial that ownership experience after that sale. Make sure that experience for that new rider or any rider is so good whenever they come in to get service or they come in to buy whatever, a new helmet, that you keep them engaged.
That journey, the dealership journey, right?
Exactly.
It's the journey in a dealership. So you're touching on every piece of that. You make your 35, 40 points on gloves, your helmet, your jacket, right? But you need to educate them on why you need that stuff. You want to ride safe. You want to be protected, right? Buy quality stuff, that's going to last you your riding experience in your second and third bike, right? But it's really hitting on all those key departments and doing a good job in your finance department.
And I think another big thing with these smaller displacement bikes is being creative and figuring out ways to keep these newer riders riding.
Yeah.
Because whenever I had my shop, it was an independent shop, and we sold a ton of consignment bikes. The amount of small displacement bikes that we got in with 100 miles on them or less 2 years later. It was huge. And it's just because they get it, they dump it over once, they don't touch it again.
Yeah.
So I think having engagements that are structured to invite them back, communicate, and say like, hey, how you liking it? And if they're a little nervous, then hey, we're having this event. Come on by. We've got other people with 400s. Let's keep you on the road and keep you going.
That's such a good point. If you're running a dealer model that's just about slinging product and you're trying to sling, we've got these new 400s, we're slinging those out and we're seeing our margin overall drop or dollar amount just go down more and more. I don't know if that's the dealership of the future anymore. I think that the dealership of the future requires a dealership to be the community hub. Like
interactive, yes.
We give you excuses to keep playing with this toy because you're right. It's easy to get somebody excited for the 3 months of them deciding they're going to get a motorcycle. Then they start looking at them. They pick out what they're going to do. They visit a dealership and finally that sale happens, right? At longest, that's 3 months of engagement where a sales department is awesome at convincing people to part ways with their money so that they can have this new toy. And then a lot of stores do a terrible job of maintaining the next 3.5 years, which if the argument is we're willing to take small margins, we're willing to invest as both dealers and manufacturers to get new riders onto bikes, then we have to make sure that we ensure, not just as dealers, but as manufacturers, we're ensuring that every single moment of those 3 years of owning it are going to be awesome. And things like the DGR, I think it's a phenomenal experience. It's something where Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, for anybody listening who doesn't know what it is, but Triumph has been a sponsor for a very long time. You guys are still sponsoring, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
100%.
But that is it's a great excuse for people to play on their toys and keep them on it and excited and doing those things. And I love that event because it kind of forces the hand of every single dealership to participate in it. Because if you're a Triumph store that's not doing it, like, why not? You're getting left out.
You're almost stupid not to, right?
Exactly.
Like it's like crazy because, and I think you said it earlier, Max, about the lady. It's like breaking those barriers down. Because even a guy, right, he goes in and he buys a bike. Okay, he goes and rides it once, but if he doesn't really have a destination or a buddy riding it, Danny, you hit it right on the head. It's like if you go into that dealership once and they say, hey, we close at 4:00 on Saturday and we're going up to Bear Mountain, I don't care, whatever it is, and we're going to grab lunch up there, blah, blah, blah. That guy does that once, he's locked in because he's going to have a great time. He just met 20 new friends, and now he's in this group, right? Like he's in this whole new family. And now he wants to go back to that dealership. Oh, you're not having one next week? Why not? Oh, it's a week after. Oh, okay. You know what I mean? And what's really interesting about that is we see the same thing with off-road. So one of the challenging transitions for a Triumph dealer is, okay, hey, we're going to do a DGR. Fantastic. We know how to do that, right? Great. But now you're like, well, okay, you got to do the same thing for off-road. You got to go find your local motocross track and you got to bring 3 bikes out there and you got to create a demo event and get people to experience a Triumph. And they're like, well, I don't know anything about that, and it's difficult. So now it's getting them transitioning in where it's a Triumph dealer that maybe has just other premium brands. Yeah. If it's a Japanese branded Triumph store, then they have some affiliation with off-road. But you see that unique dynamic, and it's the same thing. Because people will be like, well, I don't understand how he's selling so many of those off-road bikes. It's because his engagement with the community, with that network of riders, right? He's out there doing these demo days. He's going to the races. He's involved, right?
He's the community head.
That's what changes. It's you hit it right on the head, Danny. It's like, what are you doing after that? It's not like you go to a ski store, I always say. There's a ski slope. You can go there and meet all the people. There's not a riding park for street bikes. Everybody goes their own way. You need to create that environment that, hey, every third Saturday or whatever it is, just cool, unique things. And the dealers, it's crazy to sit in my desk and you can see what dealers are successful and what are not. And it's really those basics. And that's, to me, one of those basics. Hey, I want a motorcycle dealership. Let's all get together. Like I was saying about my grandfather, one of my grandfather's things back in the 70s was, hey, we're all going to Daytona. We tell every one of our customers. He put a big stupid whiteboard poster up in this store right back in the day. Mm-hmm. Hey, we're leaving for Daytona here. This is where we're staying. Hotel rooms are $49 a night, and we're going to go race on the beach and go to the bar at night and raise hell and have fun. But that's, the ride you're talking about today. And 40 or 50 guys would go and they'd have a great time. And then that customer was loyal for life, you know what I mean? Unless you did something horrible to him or his motorcycle, but that's the thing. It's like, if you're going to be in a motorcycle industry and you just want to make only money, the success is a challenge, right? You got to be passionate about it, and you got to want to be involved in the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the events and the engagement and all of it, like it's vital and it's crucial, but it's just a piece of the puzzle. I remember whenever we first came in to do the turnaround, one of the first things we needed to do was mend a relationship with
The BMW
the
club.
BMW group and the head
The
of
rider group.
Yeah.
the rider group. And,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the scary thing, what happened
That's your
was,
champion for that.
It is.
absolutely. And talking about engagement and getting new riders into that club. And the problem was, conditions had gotten so bad and the customer experience had gotten so bad. The place still looked the same. It was cool. I mean, we're downtown New Orleans. It can't not be cool. It looks great.
Yeah, right.
But the experience downstairs, I mean, it got so bad that the head of this group and just about all of the other guys in the group, they were traveling 3 states over to buy BMWs, traveling 2 states over to get them serviced rather than doing it right in their backyard. So I think that it's a comprehensive thing that really needs to be looked at with dealers to make sure not only are you providing and offering the fun stuff, but you're doing the dirty work necessary to make sure that the experience,
The nuts and bolts, right?
for whenever those fun times turn into bad times because something broke, that you're going to get it back to fun times very quickly and efficiently.
And look, I'll be honest. Coming back to the dealership to do the turnaround last year, I thought it'd be a hell of a lot easier than it was. You don't sign up for it because you think it'll be easy, but we were like, oh, we'll be able to make this work, and we got it. Like, holy crap, this is a lot. Because getting back to the basics is a really easy way of saying like what needs to happen, but the reality of the situation is like the basics of greet the customer, do the thing, put on a smiling face. Like those things are great. We got to do that and a right process for checking in customers. But when that's completely fallen apart, the basics are so hard to accomplish with a whole new staff and building it from scratch.
Yeah.
And so it was faster to turn people over and get processes and like make new little tools and bring in the right new software to make things work. What's taken the longest time is to rebuild the trust of the community and make this a hub again, where not just we've got customers who want to come in and ride, but we have a team of employees who are no longer burnt out because they're all new employees. They're
enjoying
we had to get rid of. Yeah, so they're still right now. They're on the ether downstairs still. They still enjoy that they work in a motorcycle dealership, and it's still cool to them. But
It's cool.
If we don't keep it enjoyable and easy and fun to work down there, if we don't make sure that the culture for the staff is enjoyable, then they will hate their jobs. That'll start reflecting in the experience of the customers, and then ultimately that means like it's just going to be a matter of time before this starts falling apart again. So I mean, it's an incredibly
I think one key, the one key piece with events and dealers is there's always a dealer in the market that does an amazing job. Has been doing events for 10, 15 years, and there's 200-300 people show up. It's amazing. And then another dealer finally decides to do an event. It's them having a true expectation of their event because they're like, well, I only had 58 people. I didn't have 300 like ABC did. But they've built that over time, right? And it's really setting true expectation to what success is of your first event. It's only your first one, right?
Yeah,
right.
And then building towards it, communicate with your customer. Hey, what you like about the event? What didn't you like about it? What could we do better? What would you like to see? That's something that we notice all the time. It's amazing how somebody in the market does an amazing job. You finally get another dealer like, hey, you got to get involved in events. And they do an event, and for them, I only sold 3 bikes. It wasn't. But this is the first time you've ever done it. We got to build on that, right?
It is a long game. It is a very, very long game. And it's interesting as I look forward, and I want to know what your kind of vision of future dealerships is as well. But like as I look forward, I think that future dealerships, the ones that are going to succeed over the next 5 or 10 years, are the ones that their business model, the one most important thing in their business model is to be the community hub and to build around a lifestyle, provide a lifestyle to customers. And then right after that is selling and servicing products. Like, but
Yeah.
we are a dealerships need to be a brand and an identity that a person can associate with first, just like Harley Davidson. That's why Harley Davidson is what it is, because there's been hog chapters.
100%.
You dress up like a pirate, and you are like everybody else in the Harley store. Now you're like every group of friends. Sorry for that one little dig there, but yeah, I mean it is a matter of like stores, the stores who made a bunch of money during COVID because the demand was so high and the supply was so low that they could just have huge margins, a bunch of cash. They bought up other stores. They made these big conglomerates of stores, not naming anybody in this, but like made these big conglomerates. That model didn't work as soon as we had to go back to a real business model of how a dealership operates. And the real business model is you are a community hub. You're supporting the people that are there. And if you support them, they will support you. And so I think that there needs to be this fundamental shift in, if the first thing we have to focus on as a store, as a brand, as a manufacturer, or any of that, if it's the experience of being a Triumph rider, then that comes back to like the fundamentals aren't just how do you most effectively hold margin. The fundamentals are like, how do you make people feel happy? And then we figure out all the other pieces, which is, I think,
Well, generally, if you do that, if you make them happy, like Danny was saying with the events, the pricing gets out of it.
the conversation.
You know,
yeah, it's so
because
much
they're
easier.
just like, I like going there. These guys are cool, man. I don't care if it's $50 more. They don't. You know, if you do the right things and make it a place. Look at Disney World. You think their prices are cheap? People go there because kids like it and they listen to what the customer wants and they make it an amazing experience. You know.
Yeah, looking through our old data, we found that 50% of our profit was made by 6% of our customer base, and so
Wow.
really, it just showed us like the guys who would come on Saturdays and kick tires and drink our free coffee and just hang out and shoot the shit. They were building our company. They were the ones that really kept the lights on and kept it growing. And you know what? When this particular dealership went from being community hub into just when ownership changed and it got bought by a bigger group and all this, like it kind of lost some of the flavor. It lost some of the personality that it had before.
Yeah.
And so those guys who kicked tires and drank coffee, they stopped showing up. And that was the beginning of the end of that particular culture that continued to.
Well, they
feed
tried.
back.
I mean, we've talked to them since. They really tried to stick around. And I'm pretty sure every single one of them that we talked to, what finally sent them over the edge was a bad experience in the service
It
department.
was exactly that. It was bad service
So
experiences.
whenever
It was inconsistent quoting, it was inconsistent communication or no communication. So those are the things that like, okay, if we're going to keep this customer base that we have right now, we got to make sure that these employees don't get burnt out. And we got to do that by making it easier for them to communicate. And so there's so many layers to this, but I do think that it comes with fixing your service departments, making the service departments the most important thing, and the ownership experience the most important thing, which kind of funnels into service first. I do think is like the only way that stores are going to continue to grow and be profitable in the future, especially if smaller displacement and small margin and that becomes a larger and larger part of our business model. You have to be able to make money in fixed operations. And so how do you make money in
That's
fixed
what's going to
operations?
separate them.
Exactly.
That's what's going to separate them. Yeah,
It
it
is.
will. Absolutely.
It's the ownership and it's the service experience that goes along with it. So, So last question for you is really just like looking forward. Where do you see the Triumph brand, the dealer network? Where do you think we're going as an industry selling these power sports vehicles, and who's going to really lead that charge? Do you think?
Well, I think there's so many pieces to that, right? You know, I definitely think a key piece is whether it's off-road or on is still bringing young people into it because that's the future for all the brands. Everybody, you know, has got to do a good job with that. And I think there's going to be kind of a separation in dealers as I see it today. You're going to still get the big box, the groups that come in and want to have, you know, all the brands. And then you're going to have the stores that are going to focus on 2 or 3 brands, you know, and, you know, a real hardcore niche group. And I think that some of the other pieces, I think, because competition, you know, one of the unique things in our country is we got so many cool things we can do. So we're competing with Best Buy, we're competing with boats, watercraft, snow. There's just so much. And when I speak to other GMs around the world, they don't have anywhere near the recreational opportunities that we do. It's just amazing. Well, you got to think about it. So if you take 100% of all the dealers in the U.S., right, when 60% of purchases are something that connected to off-road, whether it be a motorcycle, an ATV, or a side-by-side. If you take that same statistic in Europe, it's less than 3% off-road. So the dynamic is massive because side by side is so huge. ATV is so huge. The utility vehicle is just massive. So the dynamics here are different. So I think, what dealers have to really focus on is really understanding the market. Because I would say historically, Max, perfect guy. You grew up in a road race world. You're going to be a better sport bike performance dealer than you are an off-road or a cruiser guy. That's just generally speaking, right?
Agreed.
But then when you sit back and look at it, and we've learned this from off-road, from the 400. If I went to the general dealer, there's so many times we do presentations to dealers that come in and say, how many off-road bikes would you think you would sell? What's the number one selling bike in your store? And when they see the numbers, they are like, you're lying. I'm like, it's an MIC report. I can't lie.
I cannot lie.
This is like when you try to explain to someone that the 7th best-selling motorcycle in the United States, excluding Harley, as I said, is a YZ250F motocross bike. They're like, that's impossible. Like, nobody's ever even come in my store to trade one in. But it is, because you're not looking at that part of the market. So you really got to, my point being is, you got to understand the whole power sports market. And if it takes you getting out of your comfort zone, being a road race guy and trying to find the max off-road guy or cruiser guy, you got to do that, right? Because there's a lot of profitability in those other segments, just like you're experiencing. So it's not always necessary keep adding all these brands. It's getting better at what's really selling in your market. And the data's available because, as you said, Max, you start thinking about, on average, every brand has 40 to 50 different models, and then you get colors in there. If you got 3 or 4 brands, you're asking a sales guy, a service guy, a parts guy to understand 205 different models every year.
Yeah.
Right? No. And perfect example is go in Best Buy. If you remember, Best Buy years ago had 50 different brands of TVs. Go in there now, they got 3 or 4. You know why? There was just too many brands to manage. Yeah. And you were constantly competing with yourself, where if you would spend your energy, I don't care what brand it is really getting to be the champion of your brand, know everything about every model and the service points, all those pieces, you're going to be better at it and you're going to be more profitable because you're not going to have those 30 bikes sitting in the corner that you personally don't like and you're paying crazy flooring on it, right? Yeah. So I think is really, and that's where all the information and data helps, but focusing on knowing your market. And I think there's always going to be a place, because of the way motorcycling is here, at least in my lifetime, that for the passionate, really, enthusiastic dealership, right? That's connected, as Danny and you guys were saying, they're doing events. It's not just about, we got the lowest price, we, stack them deep and sell them cheap. It's about building that dealership brand. This is the cool kid club. Like, this is where on a Friday night, I want to go there. You know what I mean? I want to go hang out there until 7 o'clock when they close. And then I want to do the ride with Danny on Saturday at 4 o'clock. And you've got to build that community and be totally involved. And the better you do at that, man, we see it every day. You look, we got all the different regions, and why is he on top? Well, he does events all the time. He's got incredible customer engagement, and they're not perfect, those dealers. There's things that they can improve on, but they're doing those core key basics that, and they do them well, and they refine it, and that just keeps people connected. I don't care what think about golf, flying airplanes, whatever it is. There's always a cool kid club, right? Yeah. And that's where you want to get involved in it. You want to go to that golf course, right? Look at the Masters. Still hitting a ball with a club, right? But everybody in the world is dying to get in there because they built an amazing experience in a facility, right? But you take that down and you simplify it on the dealer level. If you just hang in hope, it's over, right? It's how many dealers hang in hope. And I know it's complex, but sometimes they add a lot of complexity that they don't need. One of my bosses one time told me, he said, every dealership has a capacity, and it could be capacity just because of physical size, right? You can only fit so much in and out. It could be human resource, could be financial resource. It's finding that capacity, right? And then don't overdo it. Don't try to put 10 brands into, because you still can only get 300 units out or whatever that number is. So just jamming more brands in. You think you're creating defense, right? Okay, now I'm not going to get a competitive dealer in my market or close by. Yeah. You're focused on the wrong things. You got to focus on your 4 walls and what the capacity is, do the basics, and how do you churn through that, right? And there's going to be learnings, and you got to be willing to change. So, I mean, I think the future dealers all over is because definitely cell phones and communication online, whether it's an application like we were talking about, that's all going to continue to change. But it still comes down to motorcycle people want to speak to cool motorcycle people. They don't want to talk to an AI person. So they can't, dealerships can't lose that. And I think that's some of the challenge with the big box stores because they go through staff. The other thing you notice in dealerships is, man, you got to invest in your staff. And when you get a good employee, you got to keep that employee. In my world, there's 77% of employees. The last 23% don't count, right? So you have 3%, 10%, and 64%, right? So 3%ers you'll probably work with or know, I don't know, 3 or 4 in your lifetime. Michael Jordan's, right? Just epic. 10%ers are amazing. That's somebody who does 100% of what you expect of them. That's really, really rare, right? The other 64% do 80%, which is great. That's a good employee. You want to keep them. It's the ones below that, the 23s, you just get rid of, right?
Yeah.
And that's the key piece. So when you get that, if you get a 10%er, you got to make that person stay a valuable part of your business, because I can tell you in our dealerships, if you have a great champion or a great GM or sales manager, and you got the numbers are here and they're profitable, they're making money, they're hitting 8 out of their 10 KPIs, they're involved, blah, blah, blah. That guy leaves, I'm telling you,
it drops
you're not
off.
rehiring that guy. It drops off 30%, and it's dramatic,
Yep.
And that's where you got to find that balance and really try to keep them quality, invest in your staff and keep them if you can. I know it's tough, but that's the good thing is like I would say my staff, we have 65 people here, and I would say 50 of them move to work here because they're passionate about the brand. They're engaged, and that's the cool thing about Triumph, right? It has a unique aspect. Like I would say, and my staff at Suzuki, when I was there, I probably had 150, 180 staff at one time. I would say 10% road, whether it was off-road or on. Here, it's 95%. That was more of a job, like, hey, I'm going to be an admin or I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Where here, they're coming here because they want to work with and for the brand. And that's what the dealer's got to find, because that's
great.
somebody's going to be much more loyal. But I think that's a big piece of the future, right?
I agree.
Of
I
the
agree.
dealership, regardless of what brand it is. I think that you can put any shirt on. It's building that loyalty to it, because I'd rather have a guy who is a diehard Ducati staff person than just hire somebody, from the shoe store. Because at least they're a motorcyclist. And if we as a brand do our job, he's going to believe and understand that we're not the enemy. We make good product too, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's the key. And the MIC's really getting involved in that too. I sit on the board, and they really want to support the growth of getting kids in high school and things like that to say, you know what, I want to go be a professional in the motorcycle industry, whether it's a technician, you know what I mean, at work for an OEM or whatever. So really trying to build it, because we lose that too. When we get on the OEM side, when you get people who have motorcycle background knowledge, worked in a dealership, worked anywhere, and it's a complete difference because they have an understanding. We're a unique, it's very difficult to fit auto people into the motorcycle world. If they're diehard auto and they just think, it's just different. I'm sorry, but it is, That's not to say you're doing anything wrong auto related, because they're always like process, and it's not always about process. You've got to, our industry is so much about people, right? And just communication and relationships. It's just different, and I think that's going to continue to be a big piece of it.
Yeah, of course.
I could talk about this stuff all day long. I enjoy it.
I mean, I completely agree. Actually, so when are we going to see you next in person? Is that going to be the dealer meetings coming up soon, right? Is that the international dealer meeting that's happening?
Yeah, we're going to Thailand, man.
Thailand
Super
in
excited.
October. All right.
Yeah,
good.
so we, Triumph does a global dealer meeting. I would say roughly every 5 years. They threw a wrench into it. COVID, that kind of screwed us all up, right? So we're kind of back on track, and Triumph just built a brand new state-of-the-art manufacturing facility in Thailand, in addition to the other ones they have. And our CEO, Nick Bloor, is going to cut the ribbon, with all the dealers. So I think we have 5 or 6 all-new models and a bunch of updated models, and we're going to do some amazing demos. And, so it'll definitely, I know it's a far flight, but,
it sounds pretty worth it.
we've done them before in London, which was amazing, but I think Thailand's going to be super special. And as a tease, adventure riding there is pretty epic. So
Okay, that's the tease. All right, so
that might give you a tease to a few of the models you're going to see.
hey, yeah. Well, that is great.
But I didn't say anything.
Yeah. Well, hopefully every Triumph dealer that's listening has already signed up for going to that. But yeah, that's going to be a really fun one to attend. And it'll be good to catch up with you in person on this stuff too. What's actually
likewise, man.
happening and all this. So thank you so much for joining us on the show today, for sharing all this information. And we'll see you in Thailand.
All right, man. It was fantastic. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Danny. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Rod.